Hello everybody, in today's video we have a very special forecast for you guys. It's your winter forecast for the year of 2021 into 2022. This will be going from December through February, and we're going to be taking you through my temperature, precipitation, and snowfall anomaly forecasts, as well as my overall forecast at the end of today's video, so make sure you are staying tuned all the way until the end. I'll also be responding to all of your comments down below. If you have any questions or you want a personal forecast for this winter, just leave a comment down below and I'll be sure to respond to you within a few hours of you posting it. So let's get right into it here, and let's start off with your current temperature anomaly forecast. We're going to start off with the above average area. So this is where I'm expecting it to be warmer than normal. A few notes for this winter: we're expected to go into either a very weak La Nina or an Enso neutral pattern. Typically, that means that we're going to be dealing with colder temperatures in through the northeast, the Great Lakes, and the northern plains, with warmer temperatures further to the south and into the southwest. It usually also means that it will be drier in through the west and a little bit more active in the east, and Enso neutrals are typically one of the more snowy winters, especially if you live in parts of the Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, the Mid-Atlantic, or the Northeast. So this entire region over the United States is where we typically see the most snowfall from Enso neutral winter. So it looks like this will be an exciting winter to track. I'm going to have snowfall forecasts for all of these winter storms that come up during the winter, so make sure you are subscribed by this point so that you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. And again, I'll have full coverage of these winter storms as they happen throughout the winter. I'm expecting above normal temperatures in through the west and the southern plains, as well as the southeast, because of, again, that Enso neutral pattern. Also, most of the models that I've seen for the longer range, almost all of them, have this area under above normal temperatures, and I think especially for December and January it'll be warmer in these areas. By February, I think parts of the southeast, southern plains might get into a little bit of a colder pattern, but again, that is still far out and we don't have specifics on exactly which months will be the coldest and the warmest, but I do have a few inclinations in terms of what I've seen from some of these longer range models and what we've seen from past winters. Moderately above average warmer temperatures in parts of the southwest and into the southern plains. This is where I think you're really going to feel it, and I think it will be persistent through the 3-month time frame from December through February. Again, even if you're in these in the above average area, you will probably still have a few days where you are a little bit colder or a little bit chillier than normal. This is, again, not saying that the entire winter will be warmer than normal. I'm just saying that as an average, if you were to say, let's say December and January were warmer and February was colder, it would still average out to being above normal. So that's kind of how it works. I'm expecting the majority of the days during the winter to be warmer, although again, you could still see a few days throughout the 3-month time frame where you are colder than normal or where you are below normal for the temperatures. If we move into parts of the northern plains, the Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, Northeast, and Mid-Atlantic, this is where I'm expecting it to be below normal in terms of the temperatures. This is where I think it will be colder, mainly due to, again, that Enso neutral pattern. It follows this shape quite closely, and we've seen a lot of these Enso neutral patterns come out this way. Just for reference, last winter we were in a weak La Nina, and we were a little bit higher up on that La Nina index, so we were a little bit cooler in that part of the Pacific, which led to a bit of a deeper La Nina. We will be fairly close to that. We'll be either very weak La Nina or Enso neutral, so we can expect some aspects of what happened last winter to still linger on to this winter, although I think it will be slightly different in terms of when we see the majority of the snowfall, when we see the majority of the colder temperatures. Again, I'm expecting below normal temperatures for this entire area, and I'm thinking the coldest months probably will be December and then probably into February. I think January might be a little bit more of a milder month, as we've seen in past winters as well. And probably for the early part of December especially will be colder. The later half of December might be a little bit warmer. Looking at the moderately below average area, this is where it's going to be fairly noticeable and persistent throughout the winter that these areas are colder than normal. That spans over the northern plains, the Midwest, and the upper Great Lakes, and that covers parts of the Dakotas, Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, and Michigan. This is where I think it's going to be fairly persistent. We also can't forget about that polar vortex up in northern Canada Canada and the Arctic Circle, which does dive down from time to time and potentially could happen this winter. If you see maybe 1 or 2 days where you're closer to 30, 40, 50 degrees below normal, that's going to bring your monthly and seasonal averages way down. So even if you see a majority of your days, let's say maybe 5 degrees below normal, 2 degrees below normal, if you have 1 or 2 days that are really off the chart, that's going to bring your averages quite down by quite a lot. So I think that could happen on 1 or 2 days where we see maybe 20, 30, 40 degrees below normal temperatures like we've seen in past winters, especially with the polar vortex being a little bit weaker this year. And we're going to have plenty of updates throughout the winter about the polar vortex. I like to do those type of videos, the more scientific ones where we break down what's happening in the upper atmosphere and break down the pattern. Those are definitely very, very fun for me to make. So I'll definitely have a few more of those type of videos out throughout the fall and winter time frame. Let's talk about the precipitation. So this could come in the form of rain or snowfall, but this is the liquid precipitation and whether it'll be drier or wetter than normal. I'm expecting it to be drier if you live in the southwest and also into the southeast, but not by a lot in these areas. I think you will still see quite a bit of rainfall, but I think especially for the southwest, it'll be a bit of a drier winter. And typically in Enso neutrals, we see that Pacific jets start to kind of die down, and you see most of that moisture being funneled up into the northwest instead of the southwest. So I think these areas will be fairly dry compared to normal. Also the southeast, I think you'll probably be either near normal or maybe on the lower side of normal. So I think you'll probably be on either side of normal. I'm taking the initiative to put you guys in below normal just because I would say it's more of like a 70% chance that you are below normal. Although again, you're going to be fairly close to the average either way. If we look at 4 parts of California, Nevada, and Arizona, I think these areas will be moderately below normal, and I think it will be noticeable that you're not seeing a lot of rainfall into these areas, especially as we get into the later parts of January, February, those very dry months for these spots. These areas are really going to need some rainfall, and unfortunately, I don't think you're going to get much of it throughout this winter. I think most of that will be centered into the central and northern Rockies as well as into the northwest. Here's a look at where I'm expecting above normal precipitation, rainfall, or snowfall. So I have one area in parts of the northwest that's typical for Enso neutral winters, where we see in parts of Oregon and Washington, especially right along the coast. These areas typically are well above normal in terms of the rainfall. I also have another area for the Great Plains. I've seen many models, especially some of the climate models, that have been pinpointing this area to be a little bit above normal. I would assume that would probably come closer to early December, which is when these areas see their most snowfall for most of these spots in, let's say, the northern plains for the entire winter. Once you get into January and February, usually these areas are not averaging a lot of precipitation. So I think most of that is probably coming in December or around the bookend of February. Once you get into January and early February, I think it'll be fairly dry if you live up in the northern plains. And then in parts of the Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley, Tennessee Valley, and even into parts of the interior northeast, this is where I'm expecting also slightly above normal precipitation. I think especially for late January, February, these areas are going to be hit hard with a ton of storms. Whether that be rain or snow, we still don't know, just because, again, we can't forecast individual storms 4 months, 5 months out, but we can say that there's an above average chance that these areas will be above normal for the precipitation, and by all likelihoods they will be, because in an Enso neutral pattern we are typically far above normal with the precipitation in these areas. And also, every single model that I looked at had this area or somewhere around this area being bullseyed for the above normal precipitation. So I have fairly high confidence that these areas will be fairly active. And then you can see also for the Tennessee Valley and the lower Ohio Valley, I have another area of moderately above average rainfall and snowfall. And especially for February, I think these areas will be active, and some of that might even linger in through parts of March. So let's get into your snowfall forecast. I'm expecting it to be slightly below normal if you live in parts of the southwest. Now, you might see that I covered parts of Southern California, Southern Arizona, which typically don't see too much snowfall or any snowfall at all. This is just covering mainly the areas that typically see snowfall. I'm not going to go through and trace out every single area that doesn't normally see snowfall, because that would take forever, of course, to do, especially with all the elevation differences in parts of the west. So I'm just going to broadly paint over and say slightly below average snowfall, but just know that I'm not expecting any snowfall if you typically don't see snowfall. It is possible, but again, I'm not expecting it for this winter. In parts of the northwest as well as into the eastern half of the U.S., this is where I'm expecting slightly above normal snowfall. Now, the reasoning for the northwest section is because, again, that above average precipitation mixed in with potentially near normal or even slightly below normal temperatures is a common sign for seeing above normal snowfall. So I think those two things will line up, especially for the coastal, for the higher elevation areas in the Pacific Northwest. These areas really don't need those colder temperatures. They just need the precipitation because they're already, 10 to 14,000 feet up. So you really don't need colder temperatures to see snowfall in the mountainous areas. All you need is the precipitation. Even if it's raining in Seattle, some of the mountain areas just east of there are probably dealing with snowfall anyways. So you just need the precipitation to get more of that snowfall in the northwest. And then in parts of the east, my reasoning is because, of course, that area of above normal precipitation. I also think that even if it's not showing up on the precipitation maps, watch out for the mid-Atlantic and the coastal northeast to see maybe one or two big storms, maybe 12 inches plus in those areas, 6 inches plus, that could potentially skew your averages way up compared to normal. So, again, I'm not thinking that it's going to amount to too much precipitation in liquid precipitation, but I think you will probably see one or two bigger events that kind of tip you above the normal. Now, I do have an area of moderately above average snowfall, and that's going to be for parts of the lower Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley, and the interior Northeast. I do think a lot of these storms will either hug the coast or move just inland of the coast. So that would indicate that you would see, especially for January and December, a lot of these snow events moving into the Ohio Valley and the interior Northeast. Probably by February, those tracks start to head offshore a little bit more, and that's when the coastal northeast might get integrated with some of that snowfall. But for right now, I think the majority of these storms are going to be moving in that general area, and for that reason, I think we'll see above normal snowfall for these regions. Mix that in with the above average precipitation and the below normal temperatures, and you get some above normal snowfall. So let's take a look at the overall forecast, and we're going to be kind of just breaking down this winter in just a few quick words and sentences for each region. So we'll go from west to east. We'll start off in the northwest. I'm expecting cold rain and some snow, especially in higher elevations in these areas. So I think it will be chilly. A lot of the times, the lower lying areas are just dealing with rainfall. They're not even dealing with snowfall. These areas average, for the most part, less than a foot of snowfall per year. In the lower lying areas, the mountainous areas average way more, but for a general note, these areas are averaging less than a foot of snowfall. So I think you will be above normal in that snowfall, but I think a lot of the times it's just going to be rain with some colder temperatures and then snow in the mountains. And of course, one or two of those events could drop some snow even in the lower lying areas, like we saw last year in parts of Portland and Seattle, where they had that big snowstorm last year that dropped closer to a foot of snowfall in some of those neighborhoods. Warm and dry conditions in the southwest. Unfortunately, you're not going to be getting too much relief from the drought we had, and it looks like probably you'll get most of your relief from the drought in the summer and fall months. But once we get into the winter, I think it'll be fairly bone dry into these areas. Mix that in with warmer temperatures, and you're probably not dealing with a ton of snowfall, even in the higher elevation regions. I think the snow season is going to get off a little bit to a rocky and shaky start. I don't think we're going to see too much in the higher elevations until we get into later December in parts of the southwest. I think it's going to really have to cool down quite considerably for these areas to get anything noticeable in terms of the snowfall for some of these higher elevation regions. Mountain snow along the Rockies, and I'll go a little bit more specific. In the northern Rockies, I think it'll be more snowfall than normal. I think we'll have a fairly below average season if you live in for example, parts of New Mexico, western Colorado, eastern Utah, although these areas are of course going to get a ton of snowfall anyway, so maybe just a few inches off the normal. That really won't hurt anybody, but I'm expecting a little bit less mountain snow as you get further to the south, more mountain snow compared to normal as you get further to the north. Arctic blasts in this purple color for parts of the northern plains. And again, this is referring to what we could be dealing with in terms of one or two polar vortex attacks from parts of northern Canada. Again, those drop down every once in a while, so that is the main thing that could be impactful for this winter. I think we probably will see one or two visits from the polar vortex throughout the entirety of this winter. Chilly at times if you live in this midsection of the country, so the Central Plains and the Great Plains. This is where I'm expecting it to be chilly, but I think it'll be on and off. I don't think you're going to see a sustained 3-month period of chilly conditions. I think you will definitely have, especially for January, late December, a little bit of a warmer period. And then I think probably early December and then also February will be quite chilly or colder than normal into these spots. Average conditions in the southern plains, nothing really to point out or nothing major. We could be dealing with slightly above normal temperatures, so it will be a little bit milder in these areas. But other than that, there's really nothing too noteworthy. I do want to pay attention to this area because we could see some of the storms like what we saw last year. I don't think it'll be anything close to that Texas storm that we saw last year, but we could definitely see some of those southern sliders that move to the south that kind of just clip parts of Texas and Oklahoma and then ride up further to the northeast. So we'll have to see about those. We could definitely see one or two of those storms, and that could boost your average snowfall way up in these areas since you don't average too much snowfall in the first place. So we're going to track that, and that'll definitely be very interesting to see whether that does happen or not throughout this winter. Active late if you live in the Tennessee Valley and the Southeast. I think that especially for February, it's going to be very active in these areas, whether that be in the form of rainfall or snowfall. I think it will definitely be active, especially as you live further to the north in that region. So let's say Tennessee, Missouri, Arkansas. That could be more in the form of icy or snow precipitation. You get further to the south, and I think most of it will be in the form of rain. Although, again, we could have one or two freak events that get some of that snowfall rather far to the south. Drier conditions in parts of the southeast, that's mainly the main thing to note. I do think that as we get especially into February, again, this entire eastern United States region, I think by February we'll be dealing with more precipitation than normal. But for the first 2 months of the winter, I think it will be drier than normal, and I think that will be quite substantial, and it will play a big role into how much snowfall or rainfall these areas get for the entire winter. Looking at parts of the Tennessee Valley and the lower Ohio Valley, I think it'll be snowy mid and late. So what that means is for January and February, the middle and latter months of the winter months, this is when I think it'll start to get snowy. So especially for later January into February, I think this will be a fairly snowy time period that corresponds with the active late area that I have in the Tennessee Valley. Those areas further to the south probably will be getting the rainy side of things. But once you get further to the north, mix that with some of those colder temperatures, which are also further to the north, and some of that rain might turn into snowy precipitation. So I think that's something that we want to pay attention to. For parts of the coastal northeast and coastal mid-Atlantic, I'm expecting big storms late over these areas. So February, I think, is going to be a big month, and it'll be a boom or bust month. If you don't get any storms in February, that means that your averages are probably going to be quite low for these areas in terms of the snowfall that you see for this season. If you do get maybe one or two of those big storms, like we saw last February, I believe we saw maybe 3 or 4 big storms into this area for last February. That's going to push you over the edge, and you're going to get a ton of that snowfall piling up in just 1 month. So this is going to be a boom or bust month, February especially. I think December you'll see 1 or 2 storms. January you might get 1 or 2 storms to clip your area, but really you're going to want to pay attention for February. That's usually the snowiest month in this area, and I think probably we might see 1 or 2 of those coastal storms that can actually give a decent amount of snowfall. If we look at 4 parts of the Great Lakes, the upper Ohio Valley, and also into the interior northeast, this is where I think it's going to be the worst of winter. You're going to mix the really cold temperatures, especially further to the north, with some of that precipitation further to the south. This is really going to collide within this region. You're going to deal with lake effect snowfall, which I think will be near normal, maybe a little bit above normal for this year, and then also some of the snowfall just from average events where you're just dealing with a small system that drops 3 to 6 inches and just moves by within a matter of 12 to 24 hours. I think you'll see multiple of those type of storms, and that's going to add up throughout the duration of 4 or 5 months, where you get every single week or every couple of weeks 1 or 2 storms that drops a couple of inches or a few inches of snowfall. That will add up, and I think that's one of the reasons that I put this area in worst of winter, where I think this is going to be the area that's really going to feel the winter effects this upcoming season. So that is going to wrap it up for today's video. I hope you guys do like the content. I will be making another winter forecast probably through the fall. So I'll probably have 1 or 2 more of these winter forecasts. Make sure you are subscribed because I make a ton of content similar to this, and I actually do daily uploads. So I respond to all your comments, and I also do daily videos. Make sure you are subscribed. Make sure you are leaving a like, and make sure you have notifications turned on. Again, if you have any questions or you want a personal forecast, I'll be responding to pretty much all of your comments down below. So make sure you do leave a comment, and I'll answer your questions within a couple of hours of you posting them. So I'll see you guys in the next one, and goodbye.